Every 82nd seconds in North America, this happens. Kitchen fires are the leading cause of the over 350,000 house fires that happen every year, resulting in over 2,600 deaths and billions in economical impact per year as a result. So kitchen safety is an important topic and a key component to a truly functional space, and maybe not something I talk a whole lot about. I'm here in Toronto at Pioneering Technologies, a company whose mission statement is simple:
to protect lives and property from the #1 leading cause of household fires, cooking fires.
This is Reed. He invited me to Toronto so I could get a first-hand look at Smart Burner, an incredibly safe replacement for electric coil ranges. In this video, we'll be talking safety tips to help avoid cooking fires, and ultimately how Smart Burner is saving lives by preventing things like this from happening.
Our goal is to use technology to eliminate the stovetop cooking fire problem in North America. People don't realize how fast a fire can spread and start. No one expects a fire.
Yeah.
So on the original burner, you can see there's a fire starting around the bottom of the pan. Water boiling, and because it's cast iron, it boils right through the pan. It doesn't catch on fire and burn. It's fire in the drip pan there.
Why does one burn? Why doesn't the other one burn? What's going on?
So because Smart Burner has a cast iron plate, that's this surface right here, it never actually glows red hot. So the heat's passed from the burner, the metal plate of the burner, into the pan, whereas with the coil burner, those elements glow red hot, and because they get that hot in order to go through into the pan, they ignite the paper. Whereas with Smart Burner, it goes right through the paper, it'll brown, but because it doesn't glow and the surface temperature isn't as hot, it won't start on fire. The paper is still it's still all there and the water's boiling. Whereas with this coil, the paper's all burned all the way around and it's just back to the pan sitting right on that coil.
Okay, let's talk about safety tips in the kitchen. How do we prevent fires from starting?
So the first tip we have is just avoid cooking in general anytime you might be on medications or alcohol or any drugs or even just being tired. We like to say that, treat cooking kind of like driving. If you wouldn't feel comfortable cognitively driving a car, you probably shouldn't be operating a stove, because although you may not think of it, there are a lot of other people that can be impacted by a cooking fire that maybe started because you were just too tired or you had a couple drinks or something like that. So the same as driving, plan ahead, cook dinner and then have your drinks with dinner, or have someone else cook for you, or order food online.
Right. Skip the dishes.
Yeah, skip the dishes. But also if a fire does start, you need to be focused and know what to do It's, you don't want a fire to start and you'd be so flustered.
No, I know someone watching is going to be like, well, I'm never going to boil water with the paper.
Yeah. But this is very common to have in a kitchen, roll of paper towel. If you're boiling water, and we do this as a demonstration to show that, the paper doesn't burn. But when we have something like this, if, this were to fall off the roll, come in contact with the burner, it doesn't take long for that to ignite. And if this were still attached to the roll, this would work its way back and up into your cabinets. Smart Burner, you can lay the paper towel down and it'll just brown.
And that's at full.
It's been heating for about 15-20 minutes. This burner's been on.
You forgot about it. You left the roll.
Yeah, you left the roll on. It's not going to ignite, whereas when it comes into contact with this burner, it immediately goes up. This wasn't even at max temperature there when we put that on.
All right, number 2.
On the topic of, knowing what to do in a fire, just being prepared. A lot of fires don't have to be as bad as they are. Over half of the fire related injuries were due to someone trying to put out a cooking fire. Nobody expects to have a cooking fire. You don't start a meal thinking, oh, I'm going to have a fire. So you have to think of those things before you have a fire, so that when you have it, you're prepared, you know what to do, you've thought about it, and you've kind of prepared your surroundings so that you're always kind of ready if a fire starts, because it's always that variable that, anytime you cook, you could have a fire. It immediately goes up. Big fireball, again, if you have cabinets or anything over here, that can be a serious problem. If we come over to Smart Burner, spill oil on the burner, it's just going to sizzle. And again, this burner is at maximum temperature. Cooking on the coil burner, because it gets red hot, when you spill oil on it, it immediately combusts. If you have a fire, a lot of people will, their first reaction is to just run the pot over to the sink because there's water and water puts out a fire. Well, you know, with grease fires and oil fires, water is the worst thing you could do for it because it'll make that fire worse. So our tip if you do have a fire is you just cover it. That's really all you have to do. If you have a fire in a pot or a pan or even something on the counter, like if you had paper or something like that start on fire, you just want to cover it. You want to remove the oxygen, have a pot or a pan lid, have those lids handy, have oven mitts ready so that, you know, if you have a fire, you're not using your hands, jumping in.
Right. Don't throw your flannel nightie on it.
Exactly. And stay calm. That's really the most important part. If you do have a fire, stay calm. This is kind of simulating when you'd reach across the stove to turn the knob off. And again, both of these burners are at their max temperatures. If your sleeve touches or any other, you know, a loose scarf, any other clothing touches smart burner, it might burn a little bit, but it's not going to go up in flames. Whereas if you put it on the coil, you know, you're going to burn your sleeve, but you're not going to.
Well, it's not.
You're not going to combust. Yeah.
Let's just flip it around.
Yeah, use the other side.
Fresh sleeve end here.
There you go.
Right. Pretty instant.
Yeah.
Wow. You don't want that on your arm.
No. And that will spread to the rest of your body. When anything comes in contact with that, it's just that instant heat. Number 3 is a recommendation from NFPA, so that's the National Fire Protection Association in the United States. They recommend keeping what they called a kid and pet-free zone around the stove. A lot of cooking fires come from distractions. We started because our founder, who invented the product, his wife had a cooking fire because they had 2 dogs, and she got distracted with the dogs, forgot about the food, and it started a fire. So having that 3-foot, you know, radius around your stove, you won't be tripping over, like you won't have any distractions, you won't be tripping over anyone or have anyone that could be injured in the case of a fire.
There are gates on the market for that reason that go from end to end of your kitchen and keep kids and pets out.
Well, that's a perfect solution.
There are solutions out there like that I've seen. This is saving lives.
Absolutely, yes. Not only in unattended cooking where it's going to keep your cooking safe if you forget about it, it's not going to get to that point where cooking oil ignites, but it's really just a bulletproof solution where anything that comes in contact with it or, you know, your clothing sleeve, really anything, it's not going to ignite. Do you want the tongs for the paper towel?
Yeah, I want to have some fun too, right?
Yeah.
Because this could happen easily.
Easily.
Like just something falls
the second it falls on there, it's
much like instant.
And it's gone. And if that was still attached to the roll.
And one of the problems is people don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
You got this fire going.
You don't have a bucket of water sitting in front of you.
And you've probably never used a fire extinguisher in your life.
If it's even around, you know where it is. You know, with this, if you have to get the fire extinguisher out, a close call is terrifying, whereas a close call with this, you don't even realize.
Right. All right, number 4.
Beware of your clothing. So we saw when we were doing some of our testing, loose sleeves, scarves, and hair, neckties, things that you have to be aware of. As we saw, you reach over to turn the dial on the stove and your sleeve touches the burner. There's not much space there.
No.
It will catch fire very quickly.
And that older generation would have more of those older coiled burner stoves.
Typically, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, and it's all personal preference or, you know, affordability, which kind of stove you have. Okay. But we typically see the most at-risk demographics are older, middle, lower income. Housing is typically where we see the most fires. That's just the statistics on it. Those are the same demographics that typically have the coil stoves because they're what they're used to. They work. It's what they've always had. And really they're inexpensive and they work.
Right.
So that's what they use. So this is the type of burner you'll have in any stove that's older than 2019. We just call these, this is just a traditional coil element. These didn't change for 100 years. This was really the first time they've ever changed. These never shut off. So if you turn this on high, there's no temperature regulation, nothing. It will just get hotter and hotter and hotter until the burner melts. This came back from a customer of ours. They had a close call. Luckily, they were boiling water, not grease or oil, because if they had, that would have combusted. The water boiled off and the the pan melted itself right to the burner, because these get hot enough to melt aluminum. This would have been about 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see this was a relief that there was no fire. They got very lucky, which they knew, that's why they sent us this. They just had to replace the burner and the pan. If they'd been cooking anything but water, or even, if there was anything around it, sometimes these can ignite on their own. If there's any grease in the trap or in the drip pan. Number 5 is to make sure your stovetop and the area around your stove is clear from combustibles. Mail, pizza boxes, paper towel. I know I see constantly going to friends' houses or families' houses, and people love to leave the paper towel roll right beside the stove.
Yeah, or on it.
Or on it. It's convenient. It's right there when you're cooking. You got to wipe up a mess. You got the paper towel there, or the under-counter paper towel rolls when you're designing your kitchen to maybe keep that away from the stove, so that you're in a rush, you got paper towel, and more always come off the roll. If that were to go into the burner, like we saw it within a second,
pretty quick,
that'll ignite and flames travel. They'll go right up to that roll. The scary part of a paper towel roll is it's a funnel that usually sits under your cabinet. So that one little piece could ignite, and you think, paper towel, we did it there. It's a little flame. It's not that serious, but that travels to the roll and it shoots flames into the bottom of your cabinets, which are made of wood. Stay in the kitchen. It's so easy, especially when even you put a pot of water on, and we all have busy lives. Something needs to heat up or cook, and a watched pot never boils, but a pot that's not watched could catch fire, and you get distracted. You might only think you're leaving the kitchen for 30 seconds, but we all get distracted, and it only takes a second. And if you're not right there watching it, if you have to leave the kitchen, if something comes up, just turn the burner off. If you're leaving the kitchen, be prepared to leave the kitchen for a long time. Don't think, I'm just going to run downstairs and grab something. The reality is anyone can have a cooking fire. It's all ages, all demographics. People live busy lives now. We forget about cooking. We have things everywhere who has a kitchen that has spotless counters all the time and nothing around? It's just not how we live. Yeah, that's what we're all about, is trying to prevent cooking fires and keep people in their homes as long as they can be, and stop those fires before you even know that they were going to happen. It's common for people to come in, they'll grab the mail, they'll throw it on the stove, or you'll have a box of pizza, you throw it on the stove just because you don't want to mess up your counters, or you're cooking somewhere else and you use it as storage. It's always best to keep everything off of the stove, but should you forget and throw your mail on, like the paper, that's where it's a fairly realistic test. A pizza box, something like that. And maybe you have it sitting on that burner and you mean to turn this burner on, but you do the wrong knob. Or when the stoves have knobs around the front, you could put something on the stove and someone could come and just knock one by accident and turn it on. It's always best to have the stove cleared, and if you do have something on there, or if this paper towel roll gets knocked over and it's sitting on the stove, could be the difference between a fire starting in your kitchen when you're upstairs asleep without even realizing.
Show me the smart coil. This is what I want to see. This is heavy.
Implement technology,
Wow. And like it feels like something.
We wanted to make a premium product. It's robust. It's your all-in-one, solution. You don't have to compromise to get.
Do you feel how heavy this was?
No.
How heavy it is? Like it's impressive that it's that heavy
compared to the original.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, that's like nothing.
Well, it's cast iron.
Oh, it's cast iron. Yeah. So this is your solution. This is part of the solution.
Yes.
So there's safety tips. There's doing all these things that make sure we're not, leaving our stuff unattended, putting our pizza boxes on the stove top.
Yeah.
All the things. At the end of the day, I'm a human.
Yeah.
And
it's gonna happen.
I do that. I have one of those old stoves, or my parents have one, and they're older. What is this made of? Why is this safe? Why does it do what it does? Why can I put paper on this and boil water through it?
The way Smart Burner works is when you look at the coil you're used to, is these are just coil elements that they heat up, and that's all they do. The stove controls the temperature and when it shuts on and turns off to not get too hot. But if you turn your stove on high, which most people cook on high because we're in a rush, we all want to get things done as fast as possible. With your traditional coils, you turn this on high and it will never stop heating. The only time this will stop heating is when it melts. So what Smart Burner does is it has 3 different coils that are all separate inside, and there's a temperature thermostat that monitors the temperature of that plate. It cooks normally. It'll just keep whatever temperature the stove is set at up until 660 degrees. When it gets to that danger zone, it shuts on and off those 3 coils intermittently to keep that temperature right there. So it raises and then just holds it there. It just regulates the temperature to keep it in that safe zone. That prevents things like your cooking oil igniting, or you leave the pot on the stove with your water in it. Like in this instance, you leave your pot on the stove and you forget, the water's going to evaporate, but it's not going to melt your pan. Your pan's going to be really hot, and you'll come back to a really hot, dry pan. There might be some smoke or something in there, but it's not going to melt to the burner, because this would have had to be over 1,000 degrees to melt that badly. You can almost think of it as its own cast iron pan. And we don't recommend cooking directly on it because it can be,
so you're not going to crack an egg on it.
No, so you don't want to crack an egg right on it.
Right.
But it's like your cast iron pan, where that heat comes off of the cast iron, and it's all about contact.
Very consistent too.
Yeah, so it's the metal on metal, transfers right from the cast iron surface into the pan, whereas with your coil, it kind of heats the air around the pan.
Right.
So it needs that really hot temperature to get warm. This is, you want something ideally for cooking that's going to make as much contact with that surface as possible.
I like what you said too, like about like people that maybe are renting.
Yeah.
So they're watching the video, dreaming of a kitchen, but like, oh my gosh, this is a really good feature that I can have right now under $300. I can be safer. I can have better cooking, and I think that's really good.
The whole purpose for us, that's why I reached out to you, because our mission is to save lives, eliminate cooking fires, especially because a lot of people think, a fire only affects the person who's involved, but the impact of one fire is, it really spreads, especially if there's injury or death. You got to think about not only the person involved in the fire, you have to think about if you're in an apartment unit and you have a cooking fire, your neighbor has a cooking fire, that could spread to people around you. It can spread to your neighbors. You got to think about the firefighters. They're out battling fires constantly. So if we can help reduce the number of fires that they have to go to, the number of, the mental toll it takes on them to have to, if someone does pass away in a fire, and then their families, it all balloons up. One cooking fire can impact hundreds of people. Right. Yeah. Just one. So if a little piece of technology, if we're able to, we want to get that out there and, educate people that, a lot of times you just don't know what's around. We're a small team here, doing what we can to do our part and prevent cooking fires. So it's great, partnering with people like you to help get our message out there and show people there is an option. Your parents are getting older, and aging in place is a big theme right now. It's great. So. We all want to age in place. That's where we're trying to help people age in place. Where cooking is, if you can't cook for yourself anymore, it's tough to stay in your house. But this is an option where instead of unplugging the stove and being limited to the microwave, you can just, for $300, you can throw these in, and gives their family peace of mind, and it gives them freedom. Because obviously we want to practice safe cooking, but this is a solution that can really help and be the difference between, keeping your freedom and your cooking for yourself. Smart Burner keeps the entire surface below that 600-degree danger zone. So the coils in the burner glow red because they heat a little bit differently. They warm the air around the base of the pan, and because they need to do that, anything that comes in contact, because it's so hot, like that burner would be around 800-900 degrees by now by the time it's glowing red. And since the sensor's in the middle only sensing the temperature of the pan, it'll keep the temperature of whatever on the burner is at a safe zone, but it won't actually keep the burner safe. So if you've removed your pot, you now have a burner that'll get up to 1200 degrees, whereas Smart Burner regulates the entire surface to always keep the burner, whether you've bumped the knob, left it on by accident with no pan, if there is food on it, it will stay at a safe temperature.
Thank you for watching this video, and thanks to my friends here at Pioneering Tech for introducing me to Smart Burner. If you'd like to learn more about Smart Burner, there's a link in the description below. But even better yet, if you want to get your hands on a box of Smart Burners for your old coiled stove, there's a link in the description for that as well. Be sure to check them out. Maybe just bring me back some lunch.
The more it takes, the longer until you have to get out of there.
Maybe I'll go this way. Oh, here we go.
Oh, there goes the door.
Ability feature.
Yeah. I don't think they're designed to climb on the cabinet.
No, probably not. You did it.